All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. Um, and today we're going to be talking about Ugh. Worst movies of 2025. So let's get started. Let me get my supplies out. 1, 2. And this will be my fourth beer today. I knew that I was going to be doing this today, so I decided to, prepare myself. Okay. First up on the list, and these are not in, any particular order or anything like that. First up, Captain America: Brave New World. What the hell? So this is a movie that obviously came out in February. And yeah, and this movie is a perfect example of, this movie is really just a perfect example of Marvel, of Marvel just having, no fucking clue what they're doing these days. Marvel and Disney just, throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. And, yes, I know that this was something that they set up at the end of Endgame, with Chris Evans, with Old Man Cap, handing the shield off to, Sam Wilson. But, I stand by what I said before, and that's Bucky, Bucky should have gotten the shield. And this movie is just a really perfect example of, if something doesn't work, if something didn't work originally, if something didn't work, and I know some people are going to say, oh, but they did it in the, in the comic books. This is a perfect example of, if something doesn't work, if something doesn't work, sorry guys, I can't find my words right now. If something, if something in the source material didn't work to begin with, then it's most likely not going to work on, on the big screen. And this definitely did not work at all. This movie, and I know I've talked about this to death, but this movie was reshot 4 times. And, and Marvel and Disney just, they kept, reshooting it because, again, because the test screenings were just so bad. And Marvel and Disney just, reshot the hell out of it. I think they spent like at least like 350 million on reshoots, which I know is ridiculous. And this is just, they continue to force this stuff down our throats when fans, when us fans have told, it's like nobody listens to us fans when we say, that we don't like something, when we say that something doesn't work, that doesn't mean, you know oh, well, let's try this, and, and we'll, that doesn't mean, oh, well, let's try this. Maybe, we'll reshoot this, and we'll take this out, and we'll just keep piddling with it and piddling with it until uh until something works. It's like, if something doesn't work, it doesn't work, period. And nobody cares about Sam Wilson as Captain America, because he's not Captain America. You know, nobody asked, for Sam Wilson. Nobody asked, for Sam Wilson, to become Captain America. And again, it doesn't matter, that it was in the comic book. That run, that comic run did not sell well at all. Um, so that doesn't mean, so when something doesn't work, it doesn't work. There's no other way, there's no other way to spin it. Joe Simon and Jack Kirby created, Captain America. Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, I think were Jewish, I think. And they created, Captain America, back in the 40s, when obviously when World War II was going on, and people really, really needed something to um, aspire to. They needed, when people really needed something to aspire to, something to look up to, something to believe in. Um, a symbol, a symbol of hope, so to speak. And yes, obviously, while Captain America is a fictional character, uh, he's still, he's still, I mean, I mean, he stands literally, for, America. I mean, what else is there to say? But yeah, no, this movie was so bad. It just, this movie was so bad. It was such a mess. You could tell that they just chopped the shit out of it in the editing department. Nothing about the movie made sense. The villain was flat out awful. They they completely bastardized the leader. And this movie might as well have been a Hulk movie. You had all these Hulk characters in here. You had Red Hulk, who literally didn't show up until, like, towards the end of the movie. You had Liv Tyler showing up as fucking Betty Ross at the end of the movie for no reason at all. And from what I understand, they did try to get Mark Ruffalo to come back, as the Hulk for this movie, but it just, I don't remember if it was because of a scheduling conflict, or what, but for whatever reason, he just wasn't able to come back. Um, yeah, no, this movie, the only reason why I went and saw it, obviously, is just so it's just so I could rip it apart here on the channel. Um, yeah, I will definitely not be rewatching this movie again. It was so bad. Um, and I gotta say, Captain America is obviously considered, the world's greatest human fighter ever known. In this movie, Sam Wilson was consistently getting his ass handed to him, which is further proof that they never should have made him Captain America to begin with. Um, yeah, no, this movie was just bad. It was just everything about the movie, from the editing to the CGI to the, Anthony Mackie does, the best he can, with what he's given. but that is obviously not saying much. Yeah, no, just yeah, no. This movie sucked. Next up, The Woman in the Yard. Blumhouse. What the hell? Um, so this movie, you have a woman, you have a woman and her two kids. Um, you have a woman and her two kids. The mother, from what I remember, is crippled. They aren't living in the best, they aren't living, in the best conditions. Um, the mother is very strict. Um, and there is a woman outside, in the yard, dressed in black, stalking them. Uh, Pretty much through, most of the movie. I honestly couldn't tell you what this movie was about. Excuse me. It made no sense at all. Um, the story wasn't cohesive, nothing made sense. Um, it it was just yeah. I mean, you have an African American family, you know, b- basically being stalked by, this woman, in their backyard. Um, this is supposed to be, like a horror, I guess, like a horror thriller type movie, but literally nothing about this movie made any sense at all. Um, this movie, and I it it begs the question, why do I even bother with Blumhouse movies? Um, and I gotta say, this movie, yeah, no, just this movie was just bad. I will not be, obviously, I will not be recommending this movie. Um, Next up, The Monkey. This movie is directed by Osgood Perkins, who did Longlegs, which I really liked. Um, it is a Stephen King adaptation, and you have these two brothers who don't get along. Um, the monkey is a- and like you have like this monkey that's that different people, have owned, this wind up, it's a toy monkey. It's a wind up, monkey. Um and I guess, different people, have owned him, have owned this monkey at one point or another. Um and this is another one. I really couldn't tell you what this movie was about. This movie's supposed to be, I guess, like a horror comedy. I think is what they were aiming for. Is what the movie was aiming for. But more than anything, I was like, I every supposed piece of comedy fell flat for me. Um, this movie was just, I thought it was, I I really don't understand what this movie was trying to do. And you obviously have, people getting killed off, and obviously, with horror movies, you have, You have all these, with a horror movie, obviously, you're going to have, deaths and, and stuff like that. But I really don't understand what this movie was trying to do or what it was trying to go for. Yeah, no, I did not enjoy this one at all. And I know it got great reviews on, on Rotten Tomatoes and everything, when it came out. But and that's, Osgood Perkins is actually, one of the reasons why I wanted to see it originally. Um, is because I really, really enjoyed, again, I really, really enjoyed Longlegs. Um, but yeah, no, I cannot recommend this movie, and that's why this movie is on this list. Next up, another Stephen King adaptation, The Long Walk. So this movie, um, the basic gist of this movie basically is you have to walk. If you aren't able to walk, X amount of miles, you basically get shot in the head. That's pretty much the basic gist of this movie. It is a thriller, type movie. Again, it is based on a Stephen King story. Um, which is one of the reasons why, I wanted to see it originally. Um, but you have, like these group of kids sign up to do, this long walk. And you basically need to be able to walk, what is it, like 100 miles or something like that. Um, they're given they basically need to walk, a certain amount of miles. And if you stop if you stop to tie your shoe, if you stop to take a piss, if you stop to if you stop to throw up, if you stop, for any reason, I think you're given like three warnings. And you're given like two or three warnings, and then you get shot in the head. Um, I I found this movie very, very disturbing, um, and kind of hard to watch because, you have because, these are all, all the characters are kids. And, so you have kids, like shitting themselves while they're walking. You have kids vomiting because they're so tired and they're so exhausted. Um, and a lot of these kids aren't even sure whether or not they're going to make it. It's a very, very it's a very, very hard watch. um this movie, from what I understand, bombed in theaters. From what I understand, it did not do well in theaters, you know box office wise. um but there's also, I mean, I guess that they were kind of aiming for like a brotherhood, friendship type of feel type movie. And I guess between the main character and uh and this other kid, this other kid who's African American, there is kind of, like there is very much like a buddy. uh there is very much, like a buddy, like a buddy theme between, excuse me, these two characters throughout the movie. um they're the ones that, spoilers, they're the two characters that, make it to the finish line. um I mean, Mark Hamill's in it. He did a great job as, uh I don't want to say he's a drill instructor, but the instructor who basically, the instructor, I guess you could call it, who is uh, kind of giving, like the orders for everything. Like he'll tell them when to start. He'll tell them when to start. He'll tell them, uh, like when to stop and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, no, I did not enjoy this movie at all. Yeah, no, I'm not going to recommend this. Um, Next up, Flight Risk. So um, this movie is directed by Mel Gibson of all people. And I'm not going to lie, originally when I saw the trailer for this, I got excited because I love Mel Gibson movies. Um, but this movie this movie was stupid. It was so stupid. So this movie, you have a U.S. Marshal. Um, you have a U.S. Marshal tasked to take this fugitive back to, what is it, New York? I want to say it's New York. Hold on. Yeah, a U.S. Marshal boards a small plane to transfer a government witness to New York as they cross the Alaskan wilderness. Um, so this witness, Topher Grace, um, is the witness in. He was the witness in. In this case of the U.S. Of the U.S. Marshals, and they are tasked, and she is taking him across the Alaskan wilderness back to New York. Um, and during this flight, tensions rise. Tensions rise, and everything is not what it seems when they find out that somebody on the plane is actually a hitman. And the hitman is played by Mark Wahlberg. The pilot ends up being the pilot of the plane ends up being the hitman. And Mark Wahlberg's haircut looks really fucking stupid. I don't know what they were going for there. The majority of the movie takes place, obviously, on the plane. The very end of the movie is really the only time where it doesn't take place on the plane, with the exception of, when the movie opens, when they first get on the plane. And it's a stupid movie. It's just, and apparently, what is his name? Apparently, the writer of the movie, Jared Rosenberg, apparently has never written a movie before in his life. Yes, you heard me correctly. This was his first movie. So no wonder the movie was a shit show. And it's boring. The writing is a mess. The The writing is a mess. I will admit some of the choreography in the movie was, some of the choreography in the movie was like there were some really, really nice shots. Um, you know, uh, you know, particularly when they were, flying over, the Alaskan wilderness, like those were some genuinely, like those were genuinely, some really, really nice shots, but the writing is really where this movie falls flat. The acting, I can tell you right now, the this was definitely not Mark Wahlberg's best performance. He was not up to snuff in this movie, or his acting. Um and yeah, no, I remember getting out of the theater. uh this movie came out, back in January, I think. Um, and I remember getting out of the theater and I'm like, okay, so why did I want to go see this movie? Um, and yeah, no, the movie was just bad, bad, bad writing. Um, so yeah, so if you see this movie on streaming or, or whatever, skip it. Next up, Megan 2.0. This movie is, of course, a sequel to Megan. Um, you know, just because you have a massive hit on your hands, just because, a movie, you know, performs, exceptionally well at the box office, does not automatically mean that it needs a sequel. Not everything in Hollywood needs a sequel. And Megan is definitely one of those. Um, this movie completely ditches its horror roots and goes for like a sci-fi actiony type, type of movie. Um, and I'm gonna pull up. And this is a Blumhouse movie, by the way. But I'm gonna pull up, excuse me, what Jason Blum said about Megan 2, excuse me, about what Jason Blum said about Megan 2.0, because it really is just the stupidest fucking thing ever. And I think it really shows you how stupid Jason Blum is. Um um uh yeah, so basically what they decided to do here basically overestimate overestimate how popular the character was. The first Megan obviously made, obviously made a shit ton of money. And and I love the first Megan. I have it, over here, on Blu-ray. And but what they did was basically overestimate how popular, you know, the character was. And Jason Blum, uh in an interview, in an interview, basically compared Megan to Superman, basically thinking that, we thought that we could do anything with her, which is pretty fucking stupid, if you ask me. Because, when you remove, when you remove what made, the character, so successful in the first place, when you take away that element, fell in love with, and why, when you take away the thing that, you know, when you take away the very thing, when you take away the very thing that made them, fall in love with, whatever it was in the first place, whether it's, a movie franchise, a character, whatever. When you take away that element and when you decide to take chances, and when you decide, to take chances and step out of, you know, that character's, comfort zone, chances are you're going to have a massive failure on your hands. And that is what this movie does. It fails on all levels because they basically decided, hey, let's give Megan a redemption arc and let's rip off Terminator 2, which is basically what this is. And so in this movie, they are forced to give Megan, they're forced to give Megan, an upgrade, basically to defeat this other killer robot. To defeat this other killer robot that I think the military created, or that the military created, that has gone rogue. That has gone rogue. Basically, the robot got smart enough to wonder why it had to take orders. This robot goes on a rampage. It really is just the stupidest fucking thing. I mean, there was no reason at all for Megan to get a sequel. And what you want to do, the best thing that you can do with sequels is to try to understand, what made, that character or that movie, so successful in the first place, and then try to build on that, try to keep, everything that fans love about, about that first movie, while, expanding upon it, and, keeping it, true to, true to the character, true to, true to that first movie, but still making it feel, fresh and new. This movie did not do that at all. And, and this movie, this movie fails on all levels. This movie fails on all levels. And I'm not gonna lie, originally I was looking forward to the sequel. Excuse me, originally. So yeah, I will definitely not be recommending this one. Last up, Wolfman. So this is a reboot, remake, whatever, of obviously the classic, the classic horror story, Wolfman. And I'm not gonna lie, originally I had hopes for this movie. Originally, obviously, it is a Blumhouse movie, but this movie was directed by Leigh Whannell, who did, I think, who did 2020's The Invisible Man, and I loved that movie. So when I heard that Lee Winnell was doing Wolfman, I was like, oh yeah, that should be so when I heard, that he was doing Wolfman, I was like, oh yeah, that should be awesome. I'll go see that. And little did I know it was going to end up being one of the worst movies that Blumhouse has ever put out. Why would you do, why would you make a movie built entirely around the Wolfman's, transformation? Because that's basically what this movie was. It was a movie focusing purely on his, on I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So you have a father, a daughter, you have a mother, a father, and a daughter. And and the father finds out that his father just died, supposedly. And you have so they decide to go up to the house that that he lived in. I think that they lived in or whatever. And to collect, I think, to collect the remainder of of his things. And that's where they come into contact with a werewolf. The dad gets bitten, and how the old song goes, he turns into, you know, uh, he turns into, a werewolf. The special effects in this movie are literally some of the worst I've ever seen in my life, because it is all practical effects. And now I'm not saying that practical effects are a bad thing by any means. If you can make, practical effects uh work, if you can make, practical effects work, then by all means, go right ahead. But and I get what they were trying to go for, I do, but there are some things that you just can't, there are some things that just, there are some things that just require CGI, and this is one of them. This is, this is definitely one of them. So pretty much all throughout the movie, you have, or, through, most of the movie, you have the father, basically, you have the father fighting, this other werewolf, which, spoilers, turns out to be his dad. Um, and he's like somewhere in between, human and werewolf. Um, and it's just, it could have worked out really, 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 really well had they just, taken the time, to put, to put in, the amount of care and, and respect, that a storyline, like this deserves. Um, because this movie is by far one of the worst movies that Blumhouse has ever put out. And the practical effects and the werewolf in this movie looked like total dog shit. Total incomplete dog shit. Just downright bad special effects, and just bad writing. That there were so many moments in the movie. Uh, there were so many moments in the movie where I was like, where I was just sitting there going, like, "Yo, are you fucking kidding me right now?" Like, you know, uh, like there was, it just, yeah, no, yeah, no, this movie was. And before I end this video, I want to do one dishonorable mention, and that is Superman 2025. Nobody asked for Superman to be rebooted, period. Everybody was under the impression, that Henry Cavill was coming back. And this movie was stuffed to the brim with characters. This movie was stuffed to the brim with characters. You had, in addition to, the traditional, Superman characters, obviously, like Superman, Lex Luthor, Lois Lane. You obviously, you had Guy Gardner, Metamorpho, Mr. Terrific, Hawk Girl, the Engineer, Crypto, um, um, Ultraman. Just, all these characters, and most of these characters didn't really have a reason to be there. Hawk Girl was fucking annoying. Hawk Girl fucking sucked. Um, Metamorpho, I didn't really care for. Guy Gardner was I Guy Gardner was so over the top, ridiculous, and stupid. Uh, Mr. Terrific, I thought was great. Um, Ultraman, I mean, I could take it or leave it. Um, so many things about this movie I had a problem with. And you could really tell that this was another movie that just felt really, really, really chopped up in the editing. Um, you could tell that a lot of stuff was cut out. You could tell, um, you could tell that this movie was chopped to shit in the editing department. Um, and it's just, and it's just, it's a fucking ensemble movie. It's like every other, it really is like every other, it really is like every other project, that James Gunn has ever done. It's stupid, it's juvenile, it's corny, it's, it's stupid, it's campy, and it's not the type of stuff that I want to see in 2025. Um, I will say though, the movie is a great representation of Silver Age Superman. It's just not, it just wasn't a good Superman movie. You know, in terms of it being a Superman movie, it was the most generic, paint by numbers, uh, Superman movie that James Gunn possibly could have made. And, you know, and a lot of these characters didn't really even have a reason to be there. Like Hawk Girl had no reason to be there. Um, the only the only Justice Gang, you know, character that really had an overall impact on the plot is Mr. Terrific, who was easily one of the only good things about the movie. David Cornsweet as Superman, David Cornsweet as Superman, me personally, I mean, I thought he did a good job. He's obviously no Henry Cavill. He's definitely no Christopher Reeve. But his chemistry with Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane was very, very believable. And I thought the two of them together did a great job. Their performances, again, were believable. Their relationship, was believable. But there were too many jokes in in the movie. And some of the jokes just, and every piece of comedy fell flat for me in this movie. Every single one. I was not looking for a goofy, stupid, juvenile, Superman movie. And no, I can't recommend this. Anyway, so those are my picks for worst of the year. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know, what your thoughts are. Do you agree? Let me know some of the movies that are on your list. And I will be back at some point to do my best of the year. Most probably this week. I'm gonna have to do it this week. So so probably so I will be back this week at some point to do best of the year. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know some of the stuff on your list. And if you like today's video, please take the time to like the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and you will be notified when I have new videos go up. So, so I will see you guys in the next one, and peace.